So welcome everyone to the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. As we continue to make our way through Patrul Rinpoche's book, The Words of My Perfect Teacher, which is a recording of his memory of the words of his teacher, Jigme Nyugu, if I recall the name. So this is one of the great books of Tibetan Buddhism, and not to say that it's an easy book. We're on chapter 4, which is entitled Actions, the principle of cause and effect, which means karma. I'm just going to say a couple of words about this in preparation. It can sound very, in fact, the whole book can sound very sort of moralistic, like finger wagging, like this. But it's really an appeal, an injunction to us to awaken. The discussion of the causes and effects of our actions, what underlies this is the necessity for us to come conscious. We tend to live our lives on automatic, reenacting the emotions and the patterns that we have accumulated from time without beginning. And we enact them and reenact them again and again. It's as simple as this. When you meditate, one of the things that you experience, one of the main things, is that suddenly you realize you've been lost in dream. And now you're back. This chapter, asking us to become aware of the causes and effects of our actions, is asking us to do exactly that, to come back from dreams into awareness of what we are doing in the present moment. When we lack that awareness, we reenact old patterns over and over again. And we can do harm to ourselves and others through those reenactments. There's also an injunction in this chapter again and again to confess one's crimes, one's habitual neurotic patterns. This kind of confession is not the kind of confession one might do as a Christian. An admission of guilt, or perhaps a Jew too. It's not about admission of guilt, it's about admission of unconsciousness and of coming conscious. I learned this about the Buddhist tradition years and years ago in the context of datuns. Datun means month-long period. And what this is a datun. Trungpa Rinpoche, my teacher, Michael's teacher, and indirectly through us, your teacher, admired greatly and was greatly affectionate towards Suzuki Roshi, the master of Zen Center. And I was with Rinpoche when he first visited the Zen mountain retreat inland from Carmel, California, called Tassajara. Beautiful. This is in about 1971, maybe. And there, Rinpoche saw people sitting for a month. Every day, they would sit alternate periods of sitting and walking meditation for 1 month. This is called sesshin in the Japanese Soto Zen tradition. And he loved it. And he adopted it or adapted it for us and it became Datun. Datun means month-long period of sitting. In fact, he changed it a little bit. He didn't like the fact that in Sesshin at Tassajara and in the Zen tradition, you sit programmatically periods. I think it was 40 minutes of sitting, excuse me, and then 20 minutes of walking or 10 minutes of walking, and then 40 minutes of sitting over and over again. And he didn't like that because he felt that people would become clock watchers. And so with the Datun, the periods vary. Initially, they varied wildly. Sometimes you might sit for 5 minutes and then walk for 30 and then sit for an hour and a half and walk for 5. And it just went back and forth like that. And eventually it kind of smoothed out. And today, I don't know. I don't know with Datun. I think probably it's not as variable at all. So the tradition here is to awaken from dreams. And this is what this chapter principally is about. It's to begin to see the effects of one's actions and the habits. Oh, and I was going to tell you that when we first started doing Datun, we learned that the people who were the leaders and the meditation instructors would receive confessions from the participants. Confessions of what? Confessions of neurosis of one kind or another. Neurotic behavior and neurotic thoughts, didn't matter. And we were instructed that this was not a matter of guilt, that the person receiving the confession was simply there to allow the confessor to be completely conscious about their neurotic behavior, mental or physical. That's all. And that is what confession means in this chapter too. So I'm going to make a confession. This is something that I do. I did it this morning. I was on the telephone with a technical support person about a technical issue I was having. And I had more and more difficulty communicating to this individual what the problem was and getting a solution. And I got more and more irritable, and I could hear the irritation expressing itself in my voice. And I was sure that she, who was a woman, could hear it as well. And this is a pattern. It's something I've done for a long time. Getting irritable at difficulties like this when people are, to my mind, are not competent or are not understanding or whatever it might be. And I take it out on that individual, and she didn't express any unhappiness about it. She just swallowed it. I guess probably she was trained to do that. And then the call ended. And I realized afterwards, this is a pattern. It's an unconscious pattern. I can do it. I can make a pattern of it because I do it unconsciously, habitually, repetitively. I've done it for a long time. And we all have these to some degree, some more than others. But the main point is to wake up, to see it. And when you see it, you can do something about it. Because it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant for either me or her, the perpetrator or the victim. It's unhappy. It's neurotic. And it's asleep. It's something one does over and over again habitually by falling, sort of figuratively speaking, asleep. So really this chapter is about waking up and seeing one's patterns, the causes and effects of one's actions. And in seeing it, we have the opportunity to free ourselves from these habitual learned, egotistical, self-aggrandizing, self-supporting patterns and move further down the path, not only in terms of awareness, but then in terms of being able to be kind instead of cruel, intelligent instead of habitually stupid. So I'm going to start going through this chapter. He starts out, negative actions to be abandoned. And he says, what causes us to be reborn in the higher or lower realms of samsara, you remember the God realms and the hell realms and all that, is the good and bad actions that we ourselves have accumulated. And I just gave you an example. My irritation with this technical support person put me in a lower realm, at least momentarily. But the fact that I've done it for habitually for years says that it's more than just a momentary thing. And I'm confessing this to you, not out of a feeling of guilt or shame, but as a hope that for myself, I can become a more aware and awake and free of this painful pattern, and that you will be inspired to do similar. He says, there is nothing else that consigns us to the higher and lower realms but the good and bad actions that we ourselves have accumulated. It's not chance. The 10 negative actions to be avoided. 3 are physical, 4 are verbal, and 3 are mental. The physical acts, taking life, taking what's not given, and sexual misconduct. We'll talk about that. 4 are verbal, lying, sowing discord, harsh words, and worthless chatter. And 3 are mental acts, covetousness, wishing harm on others, and wrong view. So taking life, human, animal, or any other living creature, it can be done out of desire, hatred, or ignorance. These are the 3 poisons. Desire is you want to pull something to you. You might want to kill something so you can eat it. Hatred is you want to kill it because you don't like it. It's ugly, it's dangerous, it's repulsive. And ignorance is just stupidity. You kill something, just without even knowing it sometimes. Just step on a bug when you don't even realize you're doing it. And there are 3 acts which bring about immediate rebirth in the hell of ultimate torment. These are the 3 worst acts: killing one's father or mother, killing an arhat, which means a semi-enlightened person, and to cause schism within the sangha, to make your fellow practitioners have a schism within them, their group, and to kill a Buddha. All of these are the ultimate acts of killing. And it says we've all crushed countless insects while walking around because we're unconscious about it. Or we feel that it's okay to do it. You see a bug in your bathroom and you feel like, I'm just going to kill that thing, get rid of it. Reenacting a habitual pattern. So the rich kill countless animals, livestock, and so forth. And he talks about, people who kill for eating, all kinds of people. Anyone owns a flock of sheep can be sure of at least one rebirth in hell because the sheep have lice and insects in their food, and all of these are living beings that are killed. Children kill countless animals in play. So all of us humans, in fact, spend our entire time taking life, consciously, unconsciously, hunting. And hunting, all 4 elements of a negative action are present. The 4 elements are the basis, which means knowing that you're doing what you're doing, the intention to take life, the execution, actually doing it, pulling the trigger, and completion. The animal's dead. He says, if you have the basis and intention, even if you don't execute and complete, negative karma is accrued unless you come conscious and let it go one way or another. Sometimes you have to kill, but other times we're just doing it unconsciously. Taking what's not given, three kinds: by force, by stealth, and by trickery. So by force, an individual could, rob another person at gunpoint, or an army could take a country. By stealth, secretly, like a burglar, and trickery, by lying, using false weights and measures and other tricks. He says, any profit we make by deceiving people is no different from outright theft. And he talks about monks or lamas doing business rather than studying and practicing. He says, moreover, commerce involves all sorts of negative actions: lies, tricks, slander, harsh words, envy, covetousness. Doesn't have to. There could be enlightened commerce, but usually not. Wishing harm on competitors, wanting to get the better of them. He says, so business, in fact, involves all 10 negative actions except, perhaps, wrong views and sexual misconduct. When deals succeed, enough is never enough. And he says, nothing could be more effective than trade and commerce for piling up endless harmful actions and thoroughly corrupting you. Again, it's awareness. We're unaware. We're just continually sort of acting out of self-interest and pushing aside any notion of what we might be doing to the others. You are thinking endlessly as a way to trick or cheat people and turn your back on the bodhicitta ideal of helping others. And your pernicious acts multiply to infinity. Now, it's entirely possible to do business in an enlightened way. Trungpa Rinpoche, again, when we first met, we were all hippies in one way or another. If you can believe it, I had a ponytail. And he turned us around, people who were leaving American society, and he had us buy suits. I remember we went on shopping expeditions to buy suits, sport coats, ties, the men, dresses for the women. We went into business. He encouraged us to go into business. He formed a Buddhist, I called it the BBBB stutter. It was the Bolder Better Buddhist Bureau. And we met and discussed business with him because he wanted us to get back into it. We were leaving American society when we met him. It was all the hippie times, Eastern religion. And he was turning everybody around. And I remember him saying to us in a seminar, it's not a matter of finding the way out, it's a matter of finding the way in with decency, awareness, awake, kindness, wholesomeness. Sexual misconduct. So we've got taking life, taking what's not given, stealing, and now we've got sexual misconduct. Monks and nuns are expected to avoid the sexual act altogether. And when they don't, that's sexual misconduct. Lay people leading others to break their vows. You might have a vow not to have sex. Masturbation, sexual relations with a person who is married or committed to someone else. And a bunch of them that are no longer taboo, but which were at this time, during illness, distress, pregnancy, bereavement, menstruation, or recovery from childbirth. So a lot of this is culturally set. In a place where physical representations of the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, are present, with one's parents, that would be a no-no under any circumstances. with other prohibited family members, pretty much anybody in their family, blood relations, with prepubescent children in the mouth or anus and so on, and all those have changed. And then we get to the verbal problems. Lying. 3 sorts: ordinary, major, and phony llamas lies. I guess that was much more of a problem back then. They're completely obvious. Ordinary is untrue statements made with the intention of deceiving others. Major lies have devastatingly misleading consequences, like teaching that the teachings are untrue, the Dharma is untrue, or other things. And phony llamas lies, I guess there were llamas around back in those days who said things to obtain money and fame. It was a lot more common. And then we get to the second verbal one, sowing discord. This is obvious. Openly, by people in authority, sowing discord to create a rift, secretly behind backs. And the worst is to cause conflict between members of the Sangha. It is particularly serious to cause a rift between a teacher of the Vajrayana, the secret Mantrayana, and his or her disciples among the circle of spiritual brothers and sisters. So that's the problem of sowing discord. The third verbal is harsh speech, words that make other people unhappy or uncomfortable, and especially speaking offensively in front of one's teacher, a spiritual friend, or a holy being. It's a very grave error. Now you remember this is very traditional. The last one is worthless chatter. It means a lot of talk without any purpose, talking aimlessly about subjects that stir up attachment and hatred, telling tales of prostitutes, singing libidinous songs, I've got a bunch of them, or discussing robbery and war, all entertaining. In particular, to disturb people's meditations or recitation of mantra by distracting them with a flood of useless words. Gossip, which is for the most part motivated by desire or hatred. All this is worthless chatter. It is most important that people who are practicing give up this kind of chatter and concentrate on their meditation and recitation of mantra, which is another form of meditation. And then the mental ones. Covetousness, that's wanting what belongs to others, wanting and wishing it would belong to us. That's a real sorrow. Wishing harm on others, that's the second mental one. Brooding hatred or anger about how we might harm another, bearing resentment towards another for the harm they did us, which can go on for years. Feeling disappointed when your enemy prospers or succeeds, wishing they were less talented, comfortable, less happy. Feeling glad when unpleasant things happen to your enemy. This is wishing harm on others. And it's a hellish state to be in, as we all know, those of us who have experienced that. And the final one is wrong views. And these are actions that have, excuse me, there are 2 main wrong views, or you can call them 3, but the main one, first of all, is that actions have no karmic effect. That's a wrong view, because they do. When you kill, it plants a seed in you. It plants a pattern in you. When you rob, when you lie, when you do any of these negative actions, they do have karmic effects. And the views of eternalism and nihilism. Eternalism is belief in an eternal being like God, could be Indra, Brahma, could be Yahweh. And nihilism is the belief that there is no authority, that actions cause no karmic effect. There's no past karma, there are no previous lives, and there are no future lives. It's all just sort of happening and disappearing and going away. And wrong views also include thinking that the Buddhist teachings and the teachings of your teacher and learned commentators are in error, and to doubt and criticize them. This is a wrong view. But the worst of the 10 negative actions are taking life, number one, and wrong views, number two. Why are they the worst? Because they consign you to incredible unhappiness and neurosis, very hard to get out of. He says, if you're not capable of transferring beings' consciousness to the state of great bliss, that means when they die, you should make every effort to avoid taking their lives. There is a practice that's going to be mentioned at the end of this book, and that there are people around teaching today called POA, which is transference of consciousness. When a person dies, someone who is adept at POA can help them transfer their consciousness into a heaven, which basically means a state of mind more conducive to the achievement of enlightenment. And there's a teacher in Denver, Anyan Rinpoche, who is a student of the man that I'm a student of, Khenpo Namdrol. And Anyan Rinpoche is Tibetan, and he teaches POA, transference of consciousness. So he says of having wrong views, which is the second of the worst negative actions. To have wrong views, even for an instant, is to break your vows and cut yourself off from the Buddhist community. It also negates freedom in this human existence to practice the Dharma. From the moment your mind is defiled by false views, even the good you do no longer leads to liberation, and the harm you do can no longer be confessed because you can't come conscious about it. Then there are the effects, the 4 effects of the 10 negative actions. There are 4 main effects: the fully ripened, the effect similar to the cause, the conditioning effect, and the proliferating effect. The fully ripened effect. Committing any one of the 10 harmful acts while motivated by hatred, stealing, killing, improper sexual relations, whatever it might be, lying, brings about birth in the hells. Committing any one of the 10, and hell means a hellish state of mind. You can be really, really unhappy. Committing any one of the 10 harmful acts when motivated by desire leads to birth as a preta, a hungry ghost. So if you steal and you're motivated by desire, you're just dominated by the hunger and other acts. And committing any one of the 10 harmful acts while motivated by ignorance leads to birth as an animal who just doesn't know what the consequences of their acts are, and who does them stupidly, habitually, rote. So, effects similar to the cause says of 2 kinds: action similar to the cause and experiences similar to the cause. And what this means is, if we killed before, we still like to kill. If we've stolen, we still like to steal. This is the action similar to the cause. Sometimes it's doing good. You've done good and you liked it and you're going to do good again. But it can, so this is an action similar to the cause. This is why it is said to see what you have done before. Look at what you are now. That's a really interesting one. Look at your virtues and your failings, your wisdoms and your neuroses now. And you are seeing what you've done before. To see where you're going to be born next, look at what you do now. So if you're behaving neurotically in a particular way now, like me and that tech on the phone, probably do it again. Unless I can come conscious about it and then say no, which is what this is all about. Experience is similar to the cause. Each of the 10 harmful actions results in a pair of effects on our subsequent experiences. So if you take life, to have killed in a previous life makes our present life not only short, but also subject to frequent disease, he says. I don't know. We could talk about this and see if we think it's true. It's more important to confess with regret the past actions that have brought them about and to find ways to modify each immediate problem. Because when you confess it with regret, you are bringing it conscious instead of just simply acting it again and again. We should confess with regret and vow to renounce such actions. Again, it's not a matter of being good. It's a matter of being awake and realizing what the effect of these actions are and that we can stop them. So, and as an antidote to their effects, to make efforts to undertake positive actions and abandon harmful ones. And when we do that, not only do we wake up, but we create a more wholesome, healthy state of mind for ourselves. Taking what's not given. To have stolen will make us not only poor, because we think we're poor. That's why we need to steal. But also liable to suffer pillage, robbery, or other calamities. We're putting ourselves in that world. To resort to theft, fraud, or other illicit ways of acquiring will trap us in the world of pretas, hunger, feeling that we don't have enough and that we have to steal for many kalpas, for long periods of time. Our avarice, our greed, will make us feel more destitute and deprived. And isn't that the case? However wealthy we may be. Sexual misconduct. The effect similar to the cause resulting from past sexual misconduct is that people don't get along. They should recognize that it is the effect of their past negative actions and be patient with each other. The 4 negative actions of speech. We're talking again about experiences similar to the cause. Lying. The experience similar to the cause from having lied in the past lives is that not only are we often criticized and belittled, but also we are often lied to by others. I think that, you can say, no, that isn't really true. But when you live in this world of lies, suddenly there are many more. He says, instead of getting angry and hurling insults at people who say lies and terrible things about you, be grateful to them for helping you to exhaust the effects of many negative actions. And Rigzen Jigme Lingpa, he was a great teacher in the 18th or 19th century, Nyingma, says, an enemy repaying your good with bad makes you progress in your practice because it makes you wake up. His unjust accusations are a whip that steers you toward virtue. Again, awakening. He's the teacher who destroys all your attachments and desires. Look at his great kindness that you can never repay. Sowing discord. The four negative actions of speech. Lying. That's the first one. Not only are we often criticized and belittled, but often we are lied to by others. We live in this world of lies when we lie. So he says, instead of getting angry and hurling insults at people who say lies about you, be grateful to them for helping you to exhaust the effects of many negative actions. Sowing discord. The effect similar to the cause of sowing discord is not only that our associates and servants cannot get along with each other, but also that they are argumentative and recalcitrant with us. So if we sow discord, we encourage it in those around us. Harsh words, same thing. We provoke it in others by doing it ourselves. So learn to speak gently at all times, he says. And more than that, learn to be awake when you're speaking harsh words like I did with that text. Worthless chatter. The effect similar to the cause of worthless chatter is not only what we say will carry no weight, because we're training people to regard us as talking worthlessly, but also that we will lack resolution and self-confidence. Nobody will believe us, even when we speak the truth, and we will have no self-assurance when speaking in front of a crowd. So if we get accustomed to worthless chatter, and we know it's worthless, just sort of blabbering on, we lose our confidence about saying something meaningful in front of a crowd. And then finally, there are the three negative actions of mind. Covetousness. He says the effect is not only to thwart what we most wish for, but also to bring about all the circumstances we want least. Because when we're covetous, we feel like we're lacking what we want. Wishing harm on others, same kind of thing. We wish harm on others because they diminish us in some way. And wrong views. Those are, remember, belief in the self, nihilism, belief in God, nihilism, and belief that karma doesn't work. And Nadi says, not only will we persist in such harmful beliefs, but also our mind will be disturbed by deceit and misconceptions. And then there's the conditioning effect, and this is, I'll just go through it, and you can make of it what you want. That when you take life, this produces rebirth in grim, joyless landscape, full of mortally dangerous ravines and cliffs. When we take what is not given, we're reborn in areas stricken by famine, poverty, and so on. And I think this is true, that if we feel that we have to take what's not given, the world around us is a world of poverty, lack, sexual misconduct. We live in repulsive places, sewers, swamps, etc. So if we commit incest, we are living in a world that is unattractive. Lying produces material insecurity, constant panic. I think this is true. If we're constant lying, the world is untrustworthy. Sowing discord. We inhabit inhospitable regions difficult to travel through. So when we sow discord among other people, the environment becomes dangerous. Harsh speech produces rebirth in bleak terrain. And if we're harsh in our speech, the world becomes harsh and bleak. Useless chatter, rebirth on barren and infertile ground. Same thing. Covetousness produces poor harvests and similar. If we're covetous, we feel that we're poor. We're a preta. We're a hungry ghost. And we just are not productive. We don't have enough. Wishing harm on others produces rebirth in places of constant fear with many afflictions. I mean, isn't this true? If you wish harm on others, you've got to watch out for the retaliation. You live in a world of danger. Wrong views produces rebirth in impoverished circumstances without any refuge or protectors. The proliferating effect is that whatever action we did before tends to repeat again and again. This brings an endless succession of suffering throughout our life and our subsequent lives, causing us to wander endlessly in samsara. So if we've got the habit of stealing, we're going to do it again and again, and we're going to live in that horrible world, the world of thieves, theft, lack, poverty. Then there are the positive actions to be adopted. And this is all about coming conscious. He says, in general, the 10 positive actions comprise the unconditional vow never to commit any of the 10 negative actions. So you don't kill, you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't engage in worthless chatter, and so forth. It's not strictly necessary to take such a vow in front of a teacher, but making that promise in the presence of a teacher, a spiritual friend, or representation of the 3 jewels renders it particularly powerful. What counts is that you commit yourself with a vow to avoid the negative action, whatever happens, not just that you stop the action, but you vow to avoid it. The fully ripened effect of these acts is that you will be reborn in one of the 3 higher realms. That means the human realm, the realm of the jealous gods, or the God realm. If you commit positive acts. And doesn't it make sense that when you commit positive acts, your mind becomes happier, healthier, which is the mind of a human being, a god, or a jealous god, asura. He says the effect similar to the cause as action is that you take pleasure in doing good in all your subsequent lives, so your merit goes on increasing. And isn't it the case that when we begin to get into a habit of doing good, however small, it produces pleasure, happiness? The effects similar to the causes experienced for each of the 10 are as follows. For giving up taking life, you get a long life with few illnesses. For giving up taking what is not given, you get prosperity and freedom from enemies or thieves. For giving up sexual misconduct, you get an attractive partner and few rivals. Yeah. For renouncing lies, praise, and love from everyone. For renouncing lies, you get praise and love from everyone. If you stop lying, people start liking you. For giving up sowing discord, if you just don't sow discord, the respectful circle of friends and servants, people begin to respect you more and to want to be with you. For giving up harsh words, you hear only pleasant speech. When you don't have harsh words, you have much fewer harsh words around you, coming from around you. And when you do engage in harsh words, yep. For giving up useless chatter, you get being listened to seriously. Because you're not indicating that you're not demonstrating that you're a jerk. For abandoning covetousness, the fulfillment of your wishes. I mean, if you stop wanting things, your wishes are being fulfilled. For giving up harmful thoughts, freedom from harm, and for giving up wrong views, the growth of the right view in your mind. So all of this starts with awareness, being aware of our neuroses, and giving them up, and then watching what happens. He says the conditioning effect is that you are born in places that have almost perfect circumstances. And the proliferating effect is that whatever good actions you do will multiply, bringing you uninterrupted good fortune. We could discuss. I personally think that's right. The all-determining quality of actions and all their inconceivable variety, the pleasures and miseries that each individual experiences arise only from the positive and negative actions that each has amassed in the past. If this is true, we better get with it. It is said in the Sutra of 100 Actions. I'm going to read this. The joys and sorrows of beings all come from their actions, said the Buddha. The diversity of actions creates the diversity of beings and impels their diverse wanderings. Vast indeed is this net of actions. So whatever strength, power, wealth, or property we may now enjoy, none of it follows us when we die. We take with us only the positive and negative actions we have gathered during our lifetime, which propel us onward to higher or lower samsaric realms. And then here from the Sutra of Instructions to the King. When the moment comes to leave, O King, neither possessions, friends, nor family can follow. But wherever beings come from, wherever they go, their actions follow them like their own shadow. Like their own shadow. In the sutra, it says the effects of our positive and negative actions may not be immediately evident and identifiable, but nor do they just fade away. We will experience each one of them when the right conditions come together. And then there's this quatrain, even after 100 kalpas, that's a huge period of time, beings' actions are never lost. When the conditions come together, their fruit will fully ripen. And then I really like this, and we're going to read this part here. When a bird takes off and flies high up into the sky, its shadow seems to disappear. This is like when we die and reborn and die and reborn. But that does not mean that the shadow no longer exists. Wherever the bird finally lands, there is its shadow again, just as dark and distinct as before. In the same way, even though our past good or bad actions may be invisible for the moment, they cannot fail to come back to us in the end. Indeed, how could this not be so for ordinary beings like us? When even Buddhas and Arhats, who have rid themselves of all karmic and emotional obscurations, still have to accept the effects of past actions. And I think of the Buddha, who achieved enlightenment at the age of 31 or something, and then had to live to about the age of 80. That was his karma from past actions. And he was playing out all his past karma while creating no new. This is what they say of Shakyamuni Buddha. So the stories of great kings, enlightened monks, and other exceptional individuals having to experience the effects of their own past actions, like the Buddha, teach us to avoid the slightest misdeed, however minute. Eventually, when we become more and more conscious, aware, awake, stop going to sleep, and apply ourselves to doing whatever good we can, no matter how insignificant it may seem. As long as we are making that effort, each instant of negative action is leading us, as long as we are not making that effort, each instant of negative action is leading us into many kalpas, again, long endless periods of years of life in the lower worlds. In the same way, even the smallest positive acts bring great benefit. And we can all experiment with this and then report back. Are we getting great benefit when we do positive acts? Then no images are adequate to describe the profuse growth of the fruit of positive and negative actions. And this is the message of this chapter. The tiniest transgression of the precepts too gives rise to great evils. And then for all good and bad actions, the intention is by far the most important factor that determines whether they are positive or negative, heavy or light. In the Treasury of Precious Qualities, this is a book that we might read at some point, sitting on my bookshelf. It says, what makes an act positive or negative is not how it looks or its size, but the good or bad intentions behind it. For this reason, there are times when bodhisattvas, the heirs of the conquerors, are permitted to actually commit the 7 harmful acts of the body and speech, as long as their minds are pure, free from selfish desire. Sometimes, it's a good thing to steal or kill somebody because you're actually helping other people. It says, lying in order to protect someone on the point of being killed or to protect goods belonging to the 3 jewels would also be permitted. But it is never right to deceive others in one's own interest. Harsh words could be used, for example, as a more forceful means to bring to the Dharma those on whom a softer approach makes no impression. As Atisha says, and I personally love this little 2-line teaching because it really is my experience with Trungpa Rinpoche. Atisha said, the best teacher is one who attacks your hidden faults. The best instruction is aimed squarely at those hidden faults. And I experienced this personally with Trungpa Rinpoche, very painful and very necessary. As for the 3 negative mental actions, they are never permitted for anyone because there's no way for intention to turn them into something positive. Covetousness, wishing harm on others, and wrong views. There's no way to make those beneficial. So this only applies to mental and verbal acts, physical and verbal acts. He says, the mind is the sole generator of good and bad. So always examine your mind. If your thoughts are positive, be glad and do more and more good. If they're negative, confess them immediately, feeling bad and ashamed that you still entertain such thoughts. Positive thoughts lead to the dissolution of ego, sense of I. Negative thoughts reinforce it. That's why we confess them. Because when we are reinforcing our sense of I, of ego, we go unconscious. And it's necessary to bring it conscious, which is what confession is about. Even when you do something positive, check your motivation carefully. If your intention is good, fine, act. If your motivation is to impress people, is based on rivalry or thirst for fame, or to just put some kind of piety, make sure you change it and infuse it with bodhicitta, the kindness, awake, love. So we're getting to the end here. So always watch your mind carefully. This is it. We should be awake to what's going on up here. On our level as ordinary beings, it is impossible not to have thoughts and actions which are inspired by evil intentions. They're habitual. They go on. We fall asleep and have them. But if we can recognize the wrong immediately, confess it, that means bring it conscious, and vow not to do it again, we will part company with it. That confession can be to yourself. It's probably more powerful if you're doing it with someone else, harder, because there's a quality of embarrassment of having fallen asleep and done something selfish. If you always examine your mind like this, adopting what is wholesome and rejecting what is harmful, your mind will become workable and all your thoughts will become positive. And then you'll let them go. So you should develop positive actions as an antidote with mindfulness and vigilance. Positive actions with mindfulness and vigilance. The Diamond Cutter Sutra says, Bodhisattvas practicing transcendent wisdom, that's prajna, will be tormented. Indeed, they will be greatly tormented by past actions that would have brought suffering in future lives, but have ripened in this life instead. So when you become conscious, past actions that would have ripened in future lives begin to ripen now. So such situations in which those who do good suffer and those who do harm prosper always occur as the result of actions done in the past. You can't see these connections. They happen in the past, but somebody who's doing harm can have good results because of things they've done in the past and vice versa. Your present actions, good or bad, will have their effects in your next life or in those to follow. For this reason, it is vital to develop a firm conviction about the inevitable effect of your actions and always to behave accordingly. So if we can develop this conviction about the effect of our actions, we'll come conscious and we won't be doing things that are going to produce harm to ourselves and others. So however fully you have realized in your view the nature of reality, you must pay minute attention to your actions and their effects. Milarepa said, the great Milarepa, if you cannot develop any real determination to practice the Dharma, it is because you do not really believe in the principle of cause and effect. And when you do, then you're going to start practicing the Dharma for real. Anyone with a bit of determination, he says, could develop courage like mine if they had that true and heartfelt confidence in the effects of their actions. Then they would develop the same accomplishments, and people will think that they too are manifestations, Vajradhara, or of a Buddha or Bodhisattva. This is Milarepa. So arouse confidence from the depth of your heart in this crucial point, the principle of cause and effect. It's happening right now. It determines who we are. It puts us into habits, neurotic habits that are destructive. Always do as many good actions as possible. Breaks the neurotic habit and creates good ones. No matter how small, applying the three supreme methods. Remember the three supreme methods that you do when you sit down to meditate? First, you have the you develop the inclination or the intention to promulgate bodhicitta. May all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the root of suffering. May they not be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free from passion, aggression, and prejudice. That's the first supreme method. The second is to rest here in clear awareness, awake, aware. And the third is to give away the merit selflessly. So I'm just going to read some sections here to end. Are we doing? Yes. When you wake up in the morning, do not suddenly jump out of bed like a cow or a sheep from its pen. While you are still in bed, relax your mind. Turn within and examine it carefully. If you have done anything negative during the night in your dreams, regret it and confess. You could tell your partner if you've got one, or just tell yourself. On the other hand, if you have done something positive, be glad and dedicate the merit to the benefit of all beings. Arouse bodhicitta, thinking, today I will do whatever is positive, good actions I can, and do my best to avoid doing anything negative or evil, so that all infinite beings may attain perfect Buddhahood. I'll read that again. I think I read it better. So in the morning, you arouse bodhicitta, thinking, today I will do whatever positive, good actions I can, and do my best to avoid doing anything negative or evil, so that all infinite beings may attain perfect Buddhahood. And really, the prelude to that is that today I will become conscious and see what's going on in my mind before I act on it. Or if I find myself acting on it, then I'll come conscious. Or if I've already acted on it, then I'll come conscious. At night, when you go to sleep, do not just drop off into unconsciousness. Take the time to relax in bed and examine yourself in the same way. So, what use have I made of this day? What have I done that is positive? If you've done some good, be glad and dedicate the merits so that all may obtain Buddhahood. If you've done something wrong, you should think, how terrible I have been. I have just been destroying myself. Confess it and vow never to act that way again. At all times, be mindful and vigilant that you do not cling to your perceptions of the universe and the beings within it as real and solid. That's a good one. Train yourself to see everything as the play of unreal apparitions. Finally, to make your mind workable by always keeping it on a good and honest course is essentially the aim as well as the outcome of what we have been explaining, namely, the practice of the four thoughts that turn the mind from samsara. Remember the four thoughts: joyful to have such a human birth, difficult to find, free and well-favored, and so forth. In this way, all the good actions you do will automatically be linked to the three supreme methods. If you have the right state of mind yourself, you will be able to turn the minds of all those connected with you towards the true Dharma. Immense merit for yourself and others will increase without limit. You will never again take rebirth in the lower worlds, in which your prospects get worse and worse, but will always have the unique conditions of a god's or human's life, which means, especially the human life, the opportunity to practice the Dharma. So that was a lot. But it's really enjoining us to awaken, to stop doing our mindless negative actions. Doing good actions requires awareness. Doing negative actions seems to me just to require going to sleep into habit. So we can have a discussion.
I have a question.
Steve.
Yeah, I've been wondering, because in this chapter and in Buddhism in general, there's a big, don't eat meat, kind of lots of prohibitions against that. And I struggle because one, I'm lactose intolerant. So if you have vegetarian meals, there's a lot of cheese and milk is involved, which I can't have. So it kind of makes me become vegan. But on the other hand, I'm also a biology teacher, ecology teacher, and I'm aware that other organisms eat me currently. There's a whole bunch of bacteria that are currently eating me, microorganisms that are in my skin, eating, so I'm being eaten at the same time. I could walk through the woods being eaten by a bear. So I kind of justify that at one point, even when I die, I'm still part of the food chain, the food web. I will eventually be eaten. So, and even if you adopt vegetarianism, there's a whole bunch of practices that involve, well, pesticides and killing rodents. And if you eat something, some other organism is not able to eat it. So my question is, how do you just eat in general without generating negative karma in general?
Back in the 1970s, when I met Trungpa Rinpoche, there was the huge counterculture movement that was happening in the United States. Lots and lots of hippies. And there were lots of Eastern religions coming, especially from India, but also, China, Japan, not so much China, I guess, but Japan, Korea, Mongolia. And people, especially of my age then, I was in my mid-20s, we were hippies, wearing bell-bottom pants, long hair, rebelling against the values of our parents. And people were adopting wholesale all kinds of trips. Trungpa Rinpoche fought that. Over and over again, he said to us, please don't go on any trips. And he meant by that these conceptual trips to change yourself and be virtuous. And that included vegetarianism. When I first met him, I'd been vegetarian for about 2 years, I think, a year or two, I can't remember. And the first thing that happened was I ate a hot dog. I met him up at Karmi Chilling. And he turned us all around about that and a lot of other things. And I just quoted, he said, it's not a matter of finding the way out into these other conceptual trips. It's a matter of finding the way into society with openness, with bodhicitta, with awakened mind. So I think, and then we all began, well, those of us who've been vegetarian, we dropped it, most of us. I remember there was a seminar that took place up on the Peak to Peak Highway, and here in Boulder. I'm in Boulder now, and the Peak to Peak Highway runs at about 9,000 feet, and we had a seminar up there one summer, and it took place under a roof with no walls on a dirt floor. Trungpa Rinpoche sat on a raised platform about 4 feet high in a chair with a cigarette in one hand and a glass of scotch in the other. And at one point during a Q&A, a fellow stood up in the middle of the audience, and he was real hippie, long hair down past his shoulders, no shirt, as I remember, really good build, handsome guy. And he said to Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche, the world, he said, what did he put? Your mind is your body. And he said, you're defiling your body. Rinpoche had a glass of scotch in one hand and a cigarette in the other. You're defiling your body. No, he said, something like that. Rinpoche bent over like that, and there was a dog walking across in front of the platform and in the dirt. And he started barking at the dog. And then he looked up at the guy finally, who's still standing there. And he said, the whole world is my body. All of this is our body. So I think that what he basically taught us is don't go on any trips, to use his lingo, in order to make yourself virtuous. That's worse than anything. Then you become a holy roller, a so-called virtuous person. The real task is to awaken. And when you awaken, to do what makes sense for you in your circumstances. There's nothing wrong with vegetarianism, but it's not like we have to do it in order to be virtuous. Philip.
Thank you, John, for all of the teaching. I just wanted to give you, Steve, a little information from a historical perspective. I've read in a few places that Shakyamuni Buddha addressed this question that you're raising. And it came up because of the first schism in his Sangha. I believe it was with his cousin. And so his cousin and his cousin's followers took the attitude that everyone had to be strict vegetarians. And Shakyamuni Buddha's position was that if an animal were killed specifically for you, that was a problem. But if it were just served and just killed for others and part of a meal, and you're going around with your begging bowl and some of the rice has meat in it, that's okay to have that. And that was how he answered that dilemma.
Thank you. Danielle.
Hey,
Hi.
my thinking is with vegetarianism, like, I became a vegetarian because I've seen like videos of how they slaughter animals and suffering and everything. So I don't think it's like I'm a vegetarian because it's a trip, a virtuous thing. It's because, every single day, like the amount of suffering of animals versus level of pain with bugs, I just feel like eating, vegetarianism is causing less suffering in the world, like a lot of less suffering. And I'm trying to go vegan, but it's really hard because I love cheese. But the mom cows, they take their calves away right when they're born, so they can't bond, they can't have the milk, and it's like a life of slavery and torture. And I think that is such a big thing that I really don't want to continue eating meat. But it's hard because, my family eats meat, and they don't want to see the videos because they kind of like think it's trauma, like it's terrorism for me to show them the videos, right? It's terrible to see the videos, and I understand, but I think that animals are maybe, I don't know, there's more bugs killed in the world than maybe animals, but like, just to me, there's so much suffering. I don't want to eat meat anymore, but I know it's hard. But there's a lot of suffering and torture of animals. And there's like one community is they're trying to make a monkey breeding facility for animal experiments, I think in Georgia, and the town is like saying, no, it's terrible to think about. But then when you think about bugs, you're just like, well, they're ugly, But yeah, that's why I'm vegetarian. It's not a trip or anything. It's just I don't want to eat meat. It's gross now. And I tried like the Burger King plant burger. It tasted so much like meat. I thought it was disgusting. So anyway, that's my viewpoint and stuff. So I don't think people are bad for eating meat because my family eats meat. That's my thing, So something to think about, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you.
I just also want to say, I raised the question not to make anyone feel guilty or anything like that, but just, I mean, I guess I've always justified it in the fact that, one day I will be eaten by something, whether it's fungus, insects, worms, a bear in the woods. So we're all part of the same chain of life. So one day this animal gives it up for me, and one day I'll give it up for another animal. So I don't know. I just, that was kind of the, but I don't want anyone to feel guilty or anything like that. Just to throw that out there. But and thank you all for the folks who were sending me stuff in the links in the chat and whatnot.
Val,
Yeah, thank you for your interpretations and these relating these teachings. It's amazing how appropriate it is to modern times, our time. And my attitude around the earth, preservation, eating, I like to eat a variety of foods, is just being conscious of gratitude, and gratitude, thanking the animals, thanking the people who have worked to provide the milk, the meat, the fowl, whatever, the vegetables. So to take extra time in honoring the beings, the sentient beings that I might consume, and to honor the people and the earth that has worked so tirelessly to provide this huge, generous offering. I feel very fortunate, and I need to practice more gratitude.
I'll just say, you know, we not to get overly focused on one of the 10 negative actions, killing, because there are the others too. You know, there are the 3 physical, the 4 verbal, and the 3 mental. So it's killing, stealing. What's the 3rd physical one? Sexual misconduct. You know, like committing incest, perhaps. And then there are the 4 verbal: lying, sowing discord, useless chatter. I'm forgetting the 4th. And then the 3 mental: wrong beliefs. What are they?
Can I just say, Steve, I didn't mean to like make anybody feel bad, because there are ways to humane slaughter. So I'm not trying to judge anyone. I hope everybody realizes that. So
Yeah,
my
and
apologies if
there
it came that way.
there's a lot else in this chapter besides the act of killing. And we're there, the 3 mental: covetousness, wishing harm on others, and wrong views. I mean, wishing harm on others. Anybody got an enemy that they can think of that they would like to see suffer? And what he's talking about is the negative effect on us as well as on the other individual when we engage in something like the wishing harm on others. But there are all these 9 different other acts too that are karmic, that produce effects in us, on others, that shape the world, and that when we see them, we can let them go and awaken into a very different kind of world. A world of intelligence and open-heartedness, rather than habitual neurosis. Shinyi.
Hi, I can contribute to the variety of our discussion of our bad karma here. So I've been reflecting quite deeply recently because of something that came out in my work, the kind of karma I'm creating with my line of work. So I don't think I'm doing anything in relative worldly sense as evil or anything, but so I'm in the law profession, and just in my day-to-day writing, when I reflect, there's a lot of karma around language. There's things that we say that's not entirely untruthful, but also it's not entirely truthful. And that's kind of the whole point of hiring a lawyer to represent you, right? Like you want your story framed in a good way to make your case better than the other person's case. So like reflecting on that has made me a lot more aware of my actions and my words and my writing in my work, and also makes me realize that how if you're not conscious, if you're not careful, and if you're not aware of the kind of intent you're bringing to the world, it's almost impossible not to create some kind of bad karma to make a living. Maybe I'm just biased because of my own line of work. But I do feel quite deeply that on one hand, it's something to be mindful of, and I'm glad that I have encountered teaching. And on the other hand, it's not impossible to do. I do feel that, like, having been more careful, there's like I see that, oh, there are things I can choose to not say, and there are things I can be more constructive. And I do also recognize that, there are good things I do in my work as well, but there's just kind of a mixed bag of the impact I'm putting out there. Another thing I want to add to the conversation, I don't think is particularly mentioned in this chapter, but it's kind of implied, is that there are two ways for karma to be exhausted in terms of bad karma. You either experience the consequence, for example, like you got sick because you killed a bug, I don't know, like several lives ago, or you can purify it, and you won't experience it, the consequence. So it's not like you do something and then for sure you're going to experience the result. But if you purify it, which means the confession practice, that I don't think confession is a very good word. It kind of has a connotation that doesn't match the real meaning, but there are ways where it can be purified, and it's, I think, mentioned later in the book. So just want to mention that as well.
Okay, Philip, and then we'll probably close.
So just a real quick response to you, Shen Yi. You're in a tough spot thinking about ethics and being a lawyer. And all of my friends and my daughter who are lawyers have spent their lives dealing with this. There is a person in our Sangha named Robert Bird, who is a lawyer. He teaches at UConn, and he teaches legal ethics. And that seems like the perfect solution to this dilemma. So I don't know how many job opportunities are out there for people to teach legal ethics, but if you can find one, that might be a good fit for you.
It's just a quick arbiter. I've known people who teach legal ethics, and I've known things they've done that are pretty unethical. So it's a complex one out there, but I appreciate that.
That's the lawyer part of them.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Who's leading the chants? I've forgotten already.
Well, Kurt and Meg
Oh, but
left.
they left. They left. Who would like to lead the chants?
Continue.
Trip, would you like to, if I put them up? They're gone?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll close with the closing chants. And then we have discussion group tomorrow after evening meditation. Continue this discussion. Very interesting discussion. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to mute all. So Trip, unmute yourself.
Okay.
I think I'm going to mute all. Mhm.
We'll close by saying a prayer for peace and dedicating the merit earned by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, Trip, and thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks.
John. Thanks, Trip, and everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Trip.
you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good luck to you all.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, we need it.
Let me know if you need the recording, John.